Neera G. Vargas, Director of Externship Programs and Associate Clinical Professor at UC Hastings College of the Law. I've been an externships professor for nearly a decade, and prior to that I was a public interest attorney focusing on civil rights and employment law. I've worked with well over 1,000 students in my capacity both as an attorney and as a professor. I've supervised students directly while I was in practice, and I've helped many students navigate the supervisor-external relationship. And here's the thing that I've learned. The most important part of your externship is your relationship with your supervisor. And clear communication is vital to that relationship. It's even more vital, but also more complicated when we're all working in a remote setting, when there's no open door policy and you can't just run into your supervisor in the hallway or the lunchroom. In this video, I'll provide concrete tips for ensuring that you're communicating effectively with your supervisor in a remote world. These tips are also useful when we're all back in the office together as well. In this video, I'll break down effective communication at your externship into the who and the how, and I'll provide tips in both areas. Let's start with the who, the key players at your externship. As I stated earlier, the supervisor-student relationship is the most important part of a successful externship. As it turns out, knowing who your supervisor is may not be that straightforward. Is it the intern coordinator, the team leader, the junior attorney who gives you all your assignments? The person who interviewed and hired you might not be your direct supervisor. So figure that out from the outset. Once you know who your supervisor is, find out how they like to be communicated with. Are texts okay for simple questions? Are texts okay only up until a certain time of day? Are phone calls fine? For larger and more difficult questions, should you email? Let's talk about the assigning attorney. Every time you get an assignment from a new attorney, you need to establish how they like to be communicated with. Don't forget the tips we just discussed about communicating with your supervisor. Those same questions apply here. Let's move on to the backup. The backup is someone that you go to with your questions when your supervisor is unavailable. I'm not saying you should run to the backup when your supervisor just isn't available for a couple of hours. Rather, I'm talking about someone who can answer your questions if your supervisor has an unexpected or prolonged absence. Now that we've discussed the who and the key players at your externship, let's talk about 3 important tips for how to communicate with your placement to ensure you get the most out of your remote externship. You've got 12 to 14 weeks to be successful, get what you need, and still be respectful of your supervising attorney's time. We'll focus on 3 tips: how to frame a question via email, second, how to send a weekly update, and third, my favorite tip, the standing meeting. Our first tip, framing your question. Let's say you've got a question that's just too complicated or dense for a text, or your supervisor doesn't like texts. How do you go about framing that question? Knowing how to ask a question effectively so you get a response and are also mindful of your supervisor's time is an important skill, particularly if we're working remotely and you can't just pop into your supervisor's office for clarification. So let's go through the steps. First, restate the assignment. Second, explain what you've already tried to do. Third, ask the question specifically. And fourth, offer to check in via phone or Zoom. Here, let's look at an example. Pause the video and take a minute to review this email. Now you're back. Let's actually go through the email together. You'll notice in blue, the student reminds the supervisor of the original assignment. In yellow, the student tells the supervisor what resources they've reviewed. In green, they ask their question. And in pink, they offer some times to check in via phone or Zoom. As you can see, this email is clear and concise, and more likely to get a response than a long, convoluted email that you sent to your already busy supervisor. And now, before we go into our second and third tips, we're going to cut to a class assignment related to this video. So please take an assignment or a project that you're working on currently at your placement and draft an email to your supervisor asking, in this format, a question. You can find additional instructions on how to submit this email to your professor on your class page.